Winning can cure even Jaguar fans, but how much winning has to happen before Jaguar fans can cure themselves? I answer that question here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm the host of the Locked On Jaguars, Tony Wiggins. And it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Quick reminder, go over to the YouTube page that is Locked On Jaguars. We are free to subscribe. That is at Locked On Jaguars. That's the name of the page. And then hit that like and subscribe button so you'll be a part of the show. And then I'll know that you were there. Also hit the bell so you get notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And then wherever you listen to your audio podcast, make sure you go over to that location. Make sure you swing by, stop by when you're at work or driving your car, whatever you're doing. You're not supposed to be listening. Tap into that location so that you don't miss an episode of the podcast. Thank you also to our everydayers for joining us, and you can become an everydayer. All you got to do is join us every single day here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, here's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get our destination, we'll talk about whether or not a title is good enough, obviously it is, to make the Jaguars fans forget about their history, or can they just compete for a championship and be very competitive? I'll tell you what I think about that too. Beat who? Who are the teams? Who are the signature wins the Jaguars have to win in order to prove that they have arrived? I have two answers, one that you expect and one you probably do not expect. Also, we're going to start at the very top, and we're going to talk about the level of winning that signals real change. See how we're doing here? We're going winning that is the real change. Who do they have to beat to get to that location? And then by the end, we'll tell you whether or not title contention or an actual title is going to be the real thing that's going to change Jaguar fans. First, I have to set this up to let you know, when you say change Jaguar fans, what's wrong with them? Ain't nothing wrong with them. I got some odd characteristics, but ain't nothing wrong with them. So I'm going to sit here. Jaguar fans is listening. Y'all know what it is. So just in case you don't know, I'll tell you. Nothing on earth wrong with the Jaguar fans. They have just been abused a little bit. And I don't mean to use the word abuse in light of everything that's in the media these days as some sort of slight, but we're talking about sports. The Jaguar fans have paid, have had their tax dollars on multiple occasions go towards building the stadium. I think this is the third time. The Jaguar fans have had seasons in their 27-year history now. Now watch this. It's going to blow your mind. Well, it's a little more than 27. It's coming up on 30 now. But in that time frame, they have been to 3 AFC championship games. That's a lot more than a lot of teams have been who have been around a whole bunch. And it's a lot more than some teams who won and who actually made appearances in Super Bowls. Philly's been to Super Bowl twice. They won one and lost one. But it just doesn't feel like that. And that's the thinking of me when I decided to do the show today. I'm doing this show because I know what's going on in the psyche of Jaguar fans. I have seen this picture on multiple occasions. I'm going to give you an example. Long time ago, when this team first started as an expansion franchise, got everything right away. Them and Carolina both within the first couple of years were in the AFC and the NFC championship game. Took a little 2-year hiatus, went back, had a 15-3 season and lost in the AFC championship game to Tennessee. Went a long time after that before going back to the playoffs, went back to the playoffs, and then things started to fall apart right before Jack Del Rio got fired. Fast forward this thing all the way up to 2017, went to the AFC championship again against New England and probably should have won the game. They probably did everything you could imagine to win the game. And that team's trajectory probably is a little bit different. There are probably a whole bunch of people they got rid of and people in the front office that they got fired that might have had a little more of a lengthy stay here had they gone to the Super Bowl. You think Shah Khan don't fire people now? You wait until somebody actually wins the Super Bowl. They'll be here forever. They'll have a 30-year. They'll be like the Tyler Shatley of coaching, right? So in each and every one of those situations, including 2022, the Jaguars went to the playoffs after a start that looked like a disaster, and then a start in the playoff game that looked like a disaster, and then had a pretty good showing against Kansas City. So the common denominator with all of those teams is what happened right after that. And what happened right after that is they went back to football purgatory. At least in 97, between 97 and 99, there was only 1 year, right? But all those other years, the Jaguars missed the playoffs the following season. So what happened was fans who had been used to losing at least at an 80% clip, right? And when I say losing, I mean losing record, at least at an 80% clip, they got teased. It wasn't like, okay, they're just going to get into the playoffs a year, or we're going to be around, hanging around, contending, and maybe win a wild card here and lose a wild card here and lose a divisional. Kind of like, remember Andy Reid was in Philly and he went like 5 years straight or something like that, and then they kept losing. It was like, damn, we can't get over the hump. Well, it's not like that's what happened with Jacksonville. What happened is, on 3 of those occasions when they went to the playoffs, there was no touch. There was no, you can almost touch it. Okay, we're going to get close next year. No, they went through the first couple of rounds. They were touching it. They were almost touching the Super Bowl. They were the favorites in one of those games against the Titans. They were the favorite, even though they lost to them two times early in the season. They went 15-3 in 1999, and that was it 99? Yeah, 15-3 in 1999, and the only 3 games they lost were the one team. That's why we can't stand them now. So the thing is the Jaguars have given their fan base a history of, here you go, we're going to snatch it back. And that little carrot I'm dangling or pretending to dangle, that's not a Super Bowl trophy. That's just, you're relevant now. We will never not see you as irrelevant again. We will never not look at you as a team that got lucky. The first couple of times I think it happened, I felt like people thought that they've arrived because the team was so young. After that, the next group, not so much, because, that was the David Garrard time with Mojo D and Jack Del Rio, and the game up in Philly where the Jaguars actually held somebody, but they didn't get called. But it was around that time where they were fighting and scraping and scratching for everything. Even that team went and lost to New England. They've gone to New England 3 times, 2 times in the AFC Championship, but the other time was a divisional. And they lost. And Tom Brady completed every single pass he threw, I think. Like he was like 26-28. So the thing is the Jaguars have been teased and teased and teased. If they have some success this year, we have to qualify what success is. Is success, of course, success is winning a Super Bowl. Would the Jaguar fan base look at success as being signature win? We'll go over that a little bit. Would it be first round playoff win? We've been there. Okay. Would it be championship game appearance? Or would it be Super Bowl appearance? I think that is the bottom right there. Now, I'm not talking about the fans being happy. What I'm talking about is things that you're going to remember about the season. If they go to the Super Bowl, you're going to remember that. If they go to the championship, well, if they win it, we ain't even talking about that. If they win it. If they go to the championship game, fans will be happy, but they'll say, yeah, okay, we've been here 3 times before. If they have a first round victory and then they lose, fans are going to say, oh, we've been here before. What about signature wins? Do they need signature wins in the regular season? That would help. That would help. It'll help a lot. I'm going to tell you the difference in segment 3, the difference between the title and title contention and why fans will feel differently. But first, I want us to discuss signature wins because that'll come before the playoffs. There are some signature wins, and I'm going to tell you who those signature wins can come against. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. We talk about winning. We talking about signatures. Man, ain't nothing like a brand like eBay where passion, drive, and patience or the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed. That's right. It's guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for joining me once again here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Talked about the level of winning that signals real change. We gave you some different things and showed you why a couple of these pit stops, the Jaguars have already been to there. One thing that isn't about the end result as much as it is about things that you'll remember are signature wins. If the Jaguars beat certain people on their schedule, while it won't be a consolation for winning the whole thing, it will be something that you remember that can help you feel a little bit better about the season if you're able to make a nice little run in the playoffs and have signature wins, things that people can remember. Because the only thing, we don't just remember championships. That's the obvious. The one thing the Jaguars, all football fans and basketball sports fans, period, one thing they do remember, they remember signature wins. I can point out right now, I could tell people about in 2018, there was a win against Seattle and there was one against New England everybody went crazy about. Remember? Yeah, I know you do, because you remember about the Baltimore game here in 2022 with the comeback and the Zay Jones catch and going for two, Doug doing what Doug does, right? All of those things can be extremely memorable. There are some games they can win and you'll remember, and then there's some you don't want them to lose because they'll remember those too, like the Titans game last year. Ugly game. Nobody wants to remember that. Nobody wants to remember the Texans game. So those divisional games, they mean a lot. They mean an awful lot. And the division is improved. The Jaguars have the oldest quarterback. I don't know if by age, but I know it's about experience. The oldest quarterback in the division. So there's a little bit of the rabbit has the gun thing. Like you're the hunter, you're not the hunter anymore. So all of their division games, in my opinion, are critical that they play well and they don't get boat raced by anybody and give none of those young quarterbacks any hope to look forward to during the season. The open is very, very important with Miami. I was having my conversation with one of my best friends, or one of my close friends, my man Sam. We were talking about this Dolphins game, and he doesn't think it's going to be a problem. I only think it's going to be a problem if the defense isn't ahead of the offense. That's not the team you want to play first while everybody's getting used to everything. New scheme, new defense, and they got to track me. You make one mistake, and you're down 21-0. That's why that game is real, real critical to win early, because that's a game that could get ugly because it's so early in the season. Home game against Cleveland, big game. I want them to go up in week 3 and beat Buffalo, though. I want them to beat the Bills. We got 2 of their former players. The Bills have retooled things a little bit. We got them when they were good and we weren't good. I want them to do that again. And of course, the Texans in week 4. We talked about the divisional prospects. The game against the Bears, that's another one that if they lose, you're going to set yourself back, because the Bears had the number 1 pick this year. There's no reason that team should beat Jacksonville. The Patriots are rebuilding. So when I say signature wins, who am I talking about? Now we get into the meat. We're talking about teams like Green Bay, teams that are expected to make a lot of noise in their respective division and their conference. How about Philadelphia? That's a game that the Jaguars, it seems like the Jaguars have always played Philly tough, but somehow found a way to manage to struggle in the games and not make you really feel good about the fact that they lost, because we don't believe in moral victories, right? Right. The Vikings is another team that are rebuilding. The Jaguars ought to get them. Now, up jump the boogie. Here we go right now. This is when it gets deep and it gets, hey, the Lions going to Detroit in November. 2 teams that were on the same level a couple of years ago. Jacksonville got off to a little bit of a better start, and then Detroit I think the Jags were like maybe a game better, or maybe they have the same record. And then all of a sudden, the next year, the Lions make their run and make it to the NFC Championship game, and probably should have gone to the Super Bowl if it wasn't for their inexperience. Now the Jaguars want to show that they're still doing the damn thing. This is almost balky against their GM, because that's what this is all about, in my opinion. They were picking close to each other. They decided to go in different directions how they decided to build the teams. This is a race to see who built those teams. But that would be a good signature win for the Jaguars, mainly also because the Lions are going to try to out-tough them. And it was at this very point in 23 when they played the 49ers where they got out-toughed. That's why I think this game is really, really critical. It's a road game. It's one of those you'll remember. They followed it up with going to the Texans at home against the Texans, and then going on the road against the Titans. We talked about those divisional games. Then they come home to play Aaron Rodgers if he's still healthy at that point. And I think the Jets are going to be pretty good. That could be a win because everybody wants to beat Aaron Rodgers right now, right? Going to the Raiders in December, staying home against the Titans, and the coach who closed against those last divisional games. So outside of the divisional games that are all big, I say it's the Jets, the Lions, and the Eagles and the Packers, those 4 games. Get 3 of those games, and now the psyche of the fans starts to build, and that helps you when it comes to later on, when you're going to try to appeal to the fans that, hey, man, this thing has changed. We've gotten this all together. Now, this is going to be before the Super Bowl. If you win those games, people are going to start thinking you're going to win it, or get to it at the very least, or get close to it, and that'll bode good for you. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's a difference between winning a title, being a contender, especially for a team whose fans are used to losing and who have been brought to the altar about 4 or 5 times in their short existence. And guess what happened? They got left there. They thought their life was changed. Their football self-esteem got knocked down a little bit. There's a difference between a title and contention. Trust me, I know I grew up a fan in Washington, and they ain't won a Super Bowl since 1991, but it's still, they're hanging on by a real fine, a real small piece of fishing line. They're hanging on, right? But they are still a team that is proud of who they are and who they've been in the past, because they won. Winning is something else. Nobody remembers who somebody played against. Everybody remembers who won. Everybody remembers who won. Remember that. All right, so we're going to talk about the difference between title and contention and what it could mean for Jacksonville, especially since they're used to letting their fans down. But before that, I have to let you know about Locked On Sports Today. If you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, have to turn down the volume with all that shouting and screaming. I mute mine and I can still hear them yelling. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that yelling and screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm going to start saying your team and putting my hand up because I know y'all going to know how to finish it. Y'all going to say every day. All right, so title or contention, what's the difference and how does it affect the thought process, the psyche, and the outlook for the future for Jaguar fans? I'll tell you all about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. After I let y'all know about Yahoo Finance, that's right, man. Let me explain something to you. If you have that portfolio, right, and you have different investments and different accounts, it is a nerve-wracking experience to have to look to 2 and 3 different places. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a second investor or seasoned investor, or you're looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need. And here's the thing, it's in one place. With a community of over 90 million users each month, the real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor. That is yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. All right, thank you for joining me here on Locked On Jaguars, third and final segment. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Talking about the Jaguars and whether or not the tease, the one that they have seemingly done on 1 year basis, in 1 year increments, they tease the fans to think that they're going to come out of this. I call it football purgatory, right? I call it quicksand. It's like we got 1 foot out, but we always say we're never able to totally clear that mud that kind of just pulls you in, right? Just what is that? The Godfather? Like every time I try to get out, they bring me back in. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Every time the Jaguars are almost out of trouble, here they come getting sucked back into this Venus flytrap called losing or this quicksand. And it just seems like you're perpetually there as a fan and you can't get out of it. You want to know how I know that? Because I've been a grief counselor for about 13 years now. Post game, every time, telling you over and over and over again about the same playing out that we had already seen. The skepticism in my voice. I've been called negative about a lot of people because I speak like this, but I'm telling you the truth. 4 or 5 playoff appearances in 30 years isn't good. That's 1 out of 6. You're not even batting 20%, right? And then the thing about it is usually those playoff appearances are supposed to signal at least a little mini run of multiple years of going to the playoffs. It's the total opposite with Jacksonville. They show up one time and they leave. That's it. One time, back in the dungeon for another 4 or 5 years until we can try to get it right. What is it going to take for the Jaguar fans? What is it going to take? Is it going to take a Super Bowl? Because that's what it takes for everybody else, a Super Bowl championship. But even with that, if you don't get a title, what level of winning, where's the threshold for the Jaguars fans to finally feel like, okay, we got something to look forward to. We're going to be relevant. You know, my goal is always to just be relevant and be a contender for 10 years. And you're going to mess around and get 1 or 2 of them if you keep hanging around. And if you're really, really fortunate and lucky, you do everything right from the very beginning, which they did not. And you build this dynasty up, and now you got to run for 15 years, and now you might win 4 or 5 of them, right? Hopefully that was the case, especially since your quarterback is quote-unquote generational. And your head coach has won 1 somewhere else, even though ain't no coach ever won 1 and went somewhere else and won 1. And we talked about that too. So what does it all mean? Do they have to win a title? I'll tell you what, if they win a title, this conversation, I'll probably replay this the day after they win the Super Bowl because it's going to be the biggest how y'all feeling right now moment that I've ever had. But the chances of them doing that are very, very small. That's why teams love to win those championships and love to get those titles, because what happens is it quiets the natives down. It quiets everything down. It buys you more time if you're a GM. It buys you some cachet if you're a head coach. Even though Doug got fired 2 years after winning his in Philly, still under normal circumstances, Doug Peterson and Mike McCarthy and guys like that, it's very rare that they get fired after winning the Super Bowl. Super rare. Okay? So if that causes the front office to relax and chill out, what you'll get then is you'll get coaching continuity. And hopefully it's with the same quarterback. And then you get a run the way Ben Roethlisberger had with Mike Tomlin. You get a run the way Drew Brees had one with Sean Payton. You get a run the way Donovan McNabb had with Andy Reid. Some of these things didn't result in titles, but at least they were knocking on the door, right? Because Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. And, of course, the obvious example is Belichick and Brady. There are some that are more successful than others. Some of the most successful you've ever had. But what winning does, it buys time for the coach and the GM. It makes them stop worrying. And then more of what they have been doing the entire time will continue. Therefore, you get continuity. If you get continuity, you get consistency. When you get consistency, you get messaging that is the exact same thing. You get people that are on the same page. You get an expectation. It is almost as if winning puts some sort of DNA in your gumbo that just doesn't go away. It's like a bay leaf, right? It's just there. You don't know what it does, but it does something, right? And the reason why I can say that is because I recall the New England Patriots when they won their first Super Bowl. They were an underdog. They were considered Cinderella when they won that Super Bowl. How can you be Cinderella winning the first Super Bowl of a dynasty, and now, in retrospect, you're looked at as like the greatest football team ever and one of the greatest sports franchises over a short period of time in the history of sports? So now when you look back, They weren't no damn Cinderella. That was just the beginning of something great. Or it was the beginning of something great because they won. They might not have came back next year and did it again. That may not have been, if they didn't win, winning may never start if they don't get it that first time. So with contention outside of winning, I think expectations go up. Like if you make it to the Super Bowl, or if you do what Detroit did last year and get to the finals, if you make it to the Super Bowl, you're in a territory that the Jaguar fans have never seen. So of course, they're going to remember the week. They're going to remember the build-up. They're going to remember the game. They're going to remember every single play of the game. Even with heartache, it'll still be a magical season, and it'll be one step further than they've ever gone. Get to a conference championship game and lose, same thing they've done before. Same thing they've done before. They've been through it. They're still going to have Stockholm Syndrome. They're still going to come in next year hoping that things work out, but they won't believe it because they've seen this story before. They've seen this scene all too many times. For this organization to be considered one of the worst over the last 25 years, they've been to 3 AFC championship games. They have seen that's odd that you can say that they've been to 3 AFC championship games, but they're also one of the losingest franchises in professional sports in the last 25 years. That's odd. That usually doesn't happen. So because that has happened and that's a part of their experience, getting back to that point isn't going to long-term change their mind about anything. You have to exceed it. And if you exceed it, you might as well go do that one thing that you just might as well do if you're there. Go win it. If you win it, you don't exceed it. You change it forever. It's done. So the Jaguars will have a big test. It's either win the Super Bowl or remain the same and stay who you are. No, I'm just joking. It's not that. But hopefully you listen to this and you learn that there are stages and there's critical steps to this. And remember, that last step, the Jaguars lack about 80% right now. That last 20% is hard, man. Going from a team that loses a close game in the divisional to a team that makes the Super Bowl, that's 6 quarters, and that is hard. Those 6 quarters might be almost as difficult as it was to get into the playoffs from being the team that picked first overall. I'm telling you, it's not that big of a difference. One of them looks bigger because there's a longer way to go, but in degree of difficulty, oh no, there are a lot more teams that have come from nothing to get to the point where they were decent. There's a lot more teams that have done that than decent teams that have won the Super Bowl. Trust me. All right, we got a lot of stuff coming up for you next week as we get closer and closer to the season. We're going to do some fun stuff. Maybe not this. It's going to be team specific, but not looking forward, kind of reflecting a little bit, kind of comparing and contrasting teams to the past. We might do some lists next week because we're getting close. Might take a look back to the old Jaguars and looking forward to some of these new Jaguars as well, and compare and contrast and have a little bit of fun next week. Until then, you guys make sure you take care of yourself, and I'll do the same. See you from Locked On Jaguars.